Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled today to have Ian, who has been a longtime friend from an organization we share, ISEC, which is an International Association for Students in Economics and Commerce. We both were doing that when we were in college, but then he's done some amazing things with it at a very large scale after that. And now he's chief of staff at Support Ninja. So I'm going to turn it over to Ian. And Ian, please introduce yourself. Welcome.
Super happy to be here, Bobby, and to get the invite. You and I have always, gotten along really well, as you said, when we met back in ISEC. I think it was 2018 or so. And you're the one who taught me about the concept of VUCA, which I'll never forget. And so it's good to be here. And been quite some time since ISEC days. So being my background, nonprofit management and leadership. And as you said, currently chief of staff at Support Ninja. And I have to get the question, what does a chief of staff do? And it's different everywhere. Like you can ask any chief of staff at any organization, and it's different. But for me, that entails a large oversight and exposure to organizational culture, which as a former, ISECer is great. And so I get to lead our internal communications and employee engagement teams, as well as executive and leadership support and whatnot. And there are a bunch of other random, aspects of the role, but the really fun stuff that I truly enjoy is related to organizational culture and, how we can make the employee experience better, and whether you're an on-site or a remote employee, make the workplace a better place to be.
Fantastic. That's why you're a fantastic person to have here in this topic of respect and organizational culture. Thrilled to have you, Ian. So let's dive in. Well, how do you define respect, Ian, in the workplace?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this, and I'm sure other guests have given a similar answer, and it's a bit of a cliche, but just thinking about when you teach respect to your kids, right? You teach it as the approach of a golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated, and it's kind of been wild and eye-opening on this professional journey that holds true to this day, and it all starts with that. And so for me in my role, I don't necessarily have a lot of authority per se, right? I'm not a C-level role. I'm not a director level role. I kind of float on my own island, but I need to have a certain amount of influence over things, or let's say initiatives and direction. And so I wouldn't get anywhere in my role in my job without respect, right? Without showing up and making sure that I'm treating people exactly how I'd like to be treated, leaving any ego at the door, being humble, so showing up with humility and trying to meet people wherever they're at. And something I had to do, especially in early days of my role, was just make things as convenient for the other person as possible, and be extremely mindful of, let's say, their communication preferences. If like they prefer to have meetings this time of day and they're in the Philippines, okay, I'm gonna make that work for myself, right? Or they prefer video chats over Google Chat. Perfect. I'll do that, right? Just meet people where they're at, and respecting their boundaries. And then over time was able to get that respect back. And so I think to kind of sum it up, it is that golden rule. It's not having ego, it's being humble and just, respecting other people's boundaries and preferences.
Yeah, I love it, Ian, and nothing cliched about it. It's really important for us, I think, in this day and age, to be explicit about such things. I think a lot lays in the land of implied. So it's very important, I think, to just spell it out. The other thing you did, by the way, I speak to the golden rule a lot, and I ask people and kind of challenge people to go up to what I call the platinum rule. And you just defined it. You just did. The platinum rule means treat people the way they want to be treated. And
Oh,
that's what you just laid out with the example of if their communication style preference. And yeah, fantastic. So you're doing both. You're kicking it up from the golden rule to the platinum rule.
it's my first time hearing about the platinum rule. I like
There
it.
you go. Add
I'm
that to the
gonna use
list.
that
You
from now
got
on.
VUCA, now you got platinum rule. Take it forward. So yes, and yes, please, Ian, both Isaac and Support Ninja, and really the way you've lived your life has been very international. So I'm glad you brought in that aspect of how you're working across teams globally. So when do I think you've already laid it in the definition, but when do you just feel that you're in an environment or in a relationship where there's respect with? individuals or teams?
Uh, Good question. I think for me, I've seen that in a couple ways. One is people just kind of tend to let their guard down a little bit more, or will be honest. They'll be more open to, let's say, talking about their weekend, or things like that, like what's going on or how they really feel about a certain initiative or decision, etc. Just kind of feel more comfortable in opening up about that. Um, and that again is something in my role that's a little bit unique, is I tend to be just a safe space for people to, sometimes vent or just act as a sounding board, to give feedback on ideas or sometimes play devil's advocate, whatever it may be. And that wouldn't be happening without trust or respect. Like, right, for a fact, no one would want to talk to me about any of that stuff if there wasn't a certain level of trust or respect established there. So that is one thing. And I think the other thing is when people start asking what your thoughts or your opinion is on something, I think that is another sign that respect has been established. Um, Coming into this industry of outsourcing, solutions, it's just I was new to it. As you said, I had international work and exposure through ISEC, but I was new to the industry, and a lot of the managers, directors, that I was to be working with, and sometimes had to be holding accountable to things, are not only have years more in the industry than I do, but also just more years of life experience than me, tended to be on the younger side, especially when starting out. And so over time, people started asking me my thoughts and opinions and input. And I think that is another sign that respect has been established.
I'm so glad you brought that in. I was going to open that topic up, Ian, generational differences and similarities. So yeah, talk to us more about that. With what's your experience been? Because what I just heard, that was a lovely summary actually of if you've heard of Chip Connolly, and I think it's called Wisdom at Work, his book, where just quickly for the audience and for you, Chip Conley was the founder of Joie de Vie Hotels, boutique chain of hotels in California, mostly Bay Area, and then he sold, and he worked for Airbnb kind of as an advisor to the CEO, but quickly became an employee or part of the executive team. And he was in his 50s at the time. And in that book, he speaks to how in the beginning, he felt really out of his comfort zone. He's with a lot of 20-year-olds that were super bright and tech savvy, and he wasn't. So he felt intimidated by that. But gradually, what he found is when you build respect and this connection, then it's a two-way flow that, they are keen to learn from him and he's keen to learn from them. And let me tie that also with something you just said, is you actually named the first letter in the respect quotient, which is recognize that we're different. And so do we create space to allow people to speak to their perspective, or do we shut that down? Right. So yeah, you don't have to connect those two things, but let's talk about generational. What's your experience with generational differences?
Yeah. Well, being on the younger side of the generational, equation, it's a little intimidating for me at first, where I was really worried about being respected, being trusted, et cetera, and just seen as like, who's this guy, who does he think he is? I think approaching things without ego and with humility, like I said before, is a big part of it. But also, I mean, it's exactly what you said of kind of recognizing differences and acknowledging them, not, let's say, trying to hide them. A thing is, especially coming into this role, I never pretend to know something that I don't, or I never come in pretending that I'm know more about this certain type of operations than the operations director, who's been doing it for 10 years. But then I do know about managing our internet system, right? Or our internal method of having company meetings and how we can use databases to track our goals, that type of thing. And so that I lean into, and others recognize I'm good at that. And so there are actually a few people in the company over my time here where, they have come to me for help with certain things, like, related to maybe the platforms we're leveraging and stuff like that. And I will go to them for countless other topics, of questions of their expertise and their life experience. And so I don't know if I'm necessarily adding a lot onto what you said, rather than just kind of validating it. That it starts with recognizing those differences, not trying to be defensive or hiding anything, but recognizing your own shortcomings and but also your strengths. You know, what you can help others with and what you need to go to others for help with.
Yeah, thanks. Very helpful. And I think also what I'm hearing is let's not make assumptions, right? Those examples you just gave of yourself may sound like the stereotypical, like, oh, young person must be very tech savvy and know it. Quick example, I've got three Gen Z kids, and my 21-year-old daughter herself admits, she goes, I'm really old school. She's not at all tech friendly, and she's okay with that. So I think if you connect that with what you're saying earlier about, the platinum rule and getting to know people, I think that's a key entry, right, to creating respectful relationships on both sides. The other thing I want to bring in, if you may have heard of Amy Edmondson from Harvard, who's known for psychological safety research, one big element of her research is the term teaming. So we all know, of course, about collaboration and want teams to collaborate well, but teaming means each person brings their strength, brings their magic, ingredient to their perspective. It could be on exactly the same topic where there's just different versions of the expertise and mastery. But that's when you can create a culture where there's openness to receiving people's gifts and combining them rather than competing, right? That's what creates greater productivity and engagement. Yeah, I see you nodding. So if you want to say more about that in teaming term, yeah.
Yeah, as you were describing it, I was just thinking of ways that I've seen that manifest in my own teams, at Support Ninja, where yeah, we know, for example, one of my teams, we have a process guru. She's just so great at building and improving processes. So anything that's related to that, okay. And I know that's not a strength of mine, right? And so we were able to, once you get to know each other more, and not only what your strengths are, but also what people enjoy doing, like what brings them joy in their job, like what parts of their job do they really enjoy, and then you can kind of work together in a way where you're not only doing having dividing and conquering in a way that helps you get the job done and leveraging people's strengths, but also it's having them do things they enjoy.
Wonderful. I love it. So let's go to the other end. When you feel respect is not present or is broken, if you're willing to share, save the innocent with any names or anything, but just an experience you've had where you've struggled with it and what you've done to bring things back in alignment and respect for all.
Sure. So I've always had a very low tolerance for drama, like unnecessary drama, or things not being addressed. So I'm an advocate for, if there is an issue, just trying to be direct about it, address it head on, and ask that person for a space, where we can kind of both speak our sides, come together and just try to better understand where each other's coming from. If some like passive aggression just never goes well. If there's something you just kind of let fester, it only gets worse over time. So if I do detect an issue, or think, man, why are we not, why do we seem to be passing each other? Why are we not working together? Like, I will try to just understand why. If there's something better I can be doing on my side or whatever it is, like just try to figure out what the issue is. And it's tough because the other person isn't always open to really doing that either, and I don't have a perfect answer for how to do that other than try to create a as safe a space as possible, for that person to be in an environment where they feel comfortable opening up or really trying to discuss what the issue is.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I like that timeout kind of concept, and I encourage people listening that if you get that hit and you don't do it, you're probably creating a culture of passive aggressiveness. Because I see more and more people would rather be kind and not ruffle the feathers and all that, rather than recognizing that, gee, if I addressed it right now and cleared the air, and we really, again, recognize differences, don't have to agree, that can be a healthier way to operate as a business and as teams. Let's see. The other thing I heard in that is I actually want you to speak to, especially in your role. Oh, yeah, from a global perspective, from what I'm understanding of your approach, it's about being explicit. So when things do happen, you want to name them and unpack it and resolve it with safety for everyone in mind. There's, this whole concept of like in many cultures around the world, a lot of them, us, I'll say, as an Indian American, live in the place of implied. Like we've got history with each other, we've been friends a long time, or we've worked together in other companies, and you don't speak to what that means and what works and what doesn't. And you kind of operate below the waterline. And my invitation to leaders is bring the water line down so you can see more of what's going on. And so make the implied explicit. If you want to talk to that, especially with your working with many people around the world, if you've had experiences with that.
Sure. Definitely. Just jotting some notes because I also want to quickly just go back to the previous topic quickly and something you mentioned, which something you actually mentioned before we started recording, was that toxicity starts on the top. If it's there, it can easily filter down. So it's just kind of what we were saying before, is the importance of, if there is an issue, addressing it, head on. Because if there is that present at the top leadership layer, it could seep down. It's not, maybe not intentionally, but could happen, right? And I mean, luckily, Support Ninja, the entire leadership team I work with, we're very good at that, and so there's none of that going on. But I've seen it before. I'm sure seen it plenty as well, and so just wanted to mention again that it's the importance of leading by example. Of if you want your teams to work out issues, you got to do it as well. But anyway, with the what is explicit versus implied? It's an interesting question because this is something I'm continuing to learn about, and try to improve on. Just so Support Ninja, is present in the United States, Philippines, Colombia, Romania, and Ireland. And so between all those places, right, there are some cultural differences, of course, but also preferred communication, differences. And so it has been interesting and trying to kind of what I was saying before, treat people how they want to be treated, but learn what that is, exactly, and how to go about that. And I've found that yeah, if it's kind of what you said before as well, try not to assume anything, because if you think something's implied but not entirely sure, likely something's going to be missed, and so I found that no matter who I'm working with, wherever they are, being explicit wherever possible is extremely helpful. It eliminates room for ambiguity and confusion, but also, depending who you're working with, the other person might not, if there is a question, let's say, or confusion, they're not always going to speak up, because the reality is, with some cultural differences, is that there is not as much level of comfort with being direct or asking questions, questions of clarification. And so found that, yeah, being explicit wherever possible, no matter who you're working with, is just a good way to cover your bases, and eliminate any potential confusion that may arise.
My second favorite question from the opening one is how you define respect. The last one I ask everyone is, what are your top tips? Usually 1 to 3, but there can be more. Please share your wisdom with us on how to create more respect in workplaces.
Sure. So I think one important thing, which I know some of your other guests have mentioned as well, is just the importance of coming together as people and getting to know each other beyond just the grind and hustle of the work. And so for every meeting that we have, whether it be a team meeting or a one-to-one, before we get into our long list of discussion topics, we always start with good news. And this can be professional good news, but it's usually it's encouraged for this to be personal good news, whether it be something from the weekend or just something going on in life that is important, that someone would want to share about, right? We start every single meeting that way. And sometimes, and I've been in this situation myself, the person says, well, I don't really have any good news, and it's just respecting that as well, right? Like, okay, it might be a rough time, something's going on, and that's okay if, like, there's nothing, good you want to share. And in a team meeting, you wouldn't necessarily, it's not the place to dive into that, but on a one-to-one, depending, right, then you can, okay, well, like, what's going on? If you feel comfortable with that person, there is that respect there. You can, dive into what's going on there. That's one thing. So it's across the company, across the board, we always start with that. What I said before about learning boundaries and respecting those. So, I work with a lot of folks in the Philippines, and our schedules overlap. So I do try to start my days pretty early. so we at least have our days half overlapping. And I will do my best to know when their shift is ending, right? And wait, if it's over, not reach out, or if I notice them online after their shift should be ending, I'll say like, hey, this can wait till tomorrow, et cetera. So just like, respecting boundaries once again. And then a third one, which is huge, is just listening, and creating a space for people, no matter the role, no matter, their background, to use their voice and provide feedback and then listen to that. And so it's something that I think we do a pretty good job at. Our CEO, Craig, is the most accessible, transparent leader I've ever seen. On our internet platform, we have a CEO Ask Me Anything space. Literally anyone can ask any question, and myself and some of my team make sure that Craig has time to answer those questions directly. It can be what's his favorite record. It can be something serious, like about benefits or whatever it may be, right? About the company. And he will answer every single question. We do a weekly video, not we call it Not So Friday update, where it's Craig and you'll have a special guest on, and maybe someone who was shouted out for doing an amazing thing. Could be someone who just celebrated a massive anniversary at the company or whatever, right? He'll have a special guest on, and that comes out every week to the company. And then multiple surveys and ways of requesting feedback from folks, like on the team level, the one-on-one level, and the company level, and then really doing everything we can to listen to and act on that feedback. And so I think it's okay for me to say here, we actually just got our second Great Place to Work certification this year. It's our second year going for it. And so we got it last year as our first time. It's exciting. And we got it's great to have the certification, but the part that actually matters, right, is all the feedback that you get. And so we had 80% of our employees participate in the survey and offer feedback, and got great feedback last year. We're able to put various initiatives in place based on that, right? And this year it's very fresh. We just got the results, so I'm excited to dive in again and see what additional, feedback a year later people have. And so for us, it's just, especially in this industry, making sure that everyone has a voice, that you respect what's being said, no matter who it's coming from, right? And put levels and roles outside of it, and then doing everything you can to listen to and act on that feedback. So that would be my last tip to, I think, really create a respectful workplace.
I love it, Ian. All three of those, especially that listening one. And yes, congratulations on Great Places to Work. Not only have you won it twice, but to me, that just says the commitment to acting on it, right? And that you've laid out several ways that you do it. That's the only way you can sustain that, because a lot of companies just seek those as a pat on the back, but it takes a lot of work. So congratulations to all of you at Support Ninja on that. Also, I want to say to everybody, and you brought it up too, a lot of these concepts, the three things you've said, are not new. But what I love about it is they are unique. Each company, each environment is going to come at them in their own way. And so again, like making the implied explicit, nothing about respect is rocket science, but I find very few company cultures actually do it. So thank you very much, Ian, for modeling that. Super excited for you and the role you're in and the impact you're having as an influencer at a 3,000 employee company. It's been a thrill to be with you again, Ian. Thank you.
It's been a great conversation, and yeah, thanks again for having me. And congratulations as well with all your success in this podcast. I think it's great.